Welcome to I Partied with Your Mama, your new favorite podcast. Here's your host, Jessie Daly. Don't forget to follow and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. You don't want to miss this shit.
Do you ever wonder what your mom's life was like before she became, well, your mom? This mysterious life, whether it was well lived or not. Have you ever been curious about who she was going to be before a baby showed up and changed not only the direction of her life, but the stories that she would one day leave behind? Well, I did not. Not until this one day in October of 2023. Well, I'll rewind a little.
You are listening to my mom on your new favorite podcast.
In November of 2022, my mom sent a text to my sister and I that read, "Let me know when a good time to talk." She texted it like that. She texted like a teenager, leaving out filler words and punctuation. As I'm reading the text, my phone rang and it was my sister Dawn. She probably said, "What the hell is this about?" And I'm just replaying the last few months in my head because it felt like I was going to get in trouble for something. After coming to no conclusion, we added our mom to the call, and she very plainly said, "I've been diagnosed with stage 4 bile duct cancer." And my whole world went dark. There was talking between them on the line, but I was just trying not to throw up. I pulled myself together and I was like, "Wait, what?" And I'm sure it sounded like I wasn't paying attention. I was trying to. I just was fucking spiraling. I just couldn't stop thinking about her at home alone, giving us this news that I had no idea how long she had been sitting on. I just really wanted to be there. So the next morning I was. And 11 months after that, I was at the morgue picking her up in a cardboard box. A lot happened in that 11 months. I'll save it for another episode. Sometime in the week after her death, my sister and I were in her bedroom going through her closet. We were both exhausted and overwhelmed, but we didn't fail to find the humor in her wardrobe. You know, the clothes that look nothing like the person except to say if that person was on vacation in Hawaii? We would take turns guessing which trip the item was solely purchased for, laughing at biker Pammy when she was dating that one guy, and the mesh pants when she was cruise ship Barbie. I mean, Pammy. Half of her closet was stuff she wore only for a particular occasion, but for some reason she kept it. There was this red dress I swear she wore for a reunion when she was super young, and the baby blue polyester travesty she wore when she brought me home from the hospital. Yeah, that was in her closet. I wouldn't put it past her to keep these things just so Donna and I would crack a few jokes at her expense and make fun of her a little during such a horrible time. But had it been her plan, I think it would have included many more outfits to decipher. She was just 71 when she died. That woman was robbed. The amount of anger I carried and still carry far exceeds the limit of what I was designed to handle. I feel so lucky that my sister is hilarious because that's how we've gotten through everything. When she got to the top of the closet and started going through the guns, I lost interest and turned my attention to the vanity I was sitting at. It was the one I'd watched my mom do her makeup when I was a little girl, the same one I did her makeup at when I was a teenager. I opened the little drawer on the side and I found her pocket sized calendars. She kept them like journals, always in her purse, writing in nearly every day, whether it be who she had lunch with or what the weather was or which team won the football game. In the drawer, I also found a stash of $2 bills that She would save for me, like for tooth fairy money. Then there was this envelope addressed to her from someone in Phoenix. Right now, I can't remember if the sender's name was on it, but I did notice the date, and it seemed far too old to warrant a spot in the drawer. Opening the letter felt weird. Like, I'm not the type of person that would read your diary, even if you left it open. I chalk it up to I have enough of my own problems. Why would I want to know yours, sort of thing? But I mean, after you die, whoever your beneficiary is, they kind of have to go through everything. So remember that. As I opened the letter and started reading it, my sister came over. She asked who it was from, and I said I didn't know who he was, but I was pretty sure he was breaking up with her. That night I couldn't sleep. Although it's never been my favorite part of the day, in the 4 months I was living with her at the end, I found sleep to be as appealing as food. Not at all. Laying in her bed one night, I couldn't figure out why I had never heard of this man. And I was becoming obsessed with the fact that it probably meant there was a lot I didn't know about this woman, which made me way more curious than sad, but still sad. She was no longer around for me to pester about this guy. I had so many questions. Like, holy shit. At what point did you know he was married? Because he was. He said it in the letter. He said he was going to try to make it work with his wife again. Of course he was. They never leave their wives. The more I thought about it, the more questions I had. But the most important one was, did she love him? Because if she did, this guy broke her heart. I really wanted to know who she talked to about it. How big of a secret was he? Did she make peace with it all? Did she do it in silence? Mothers do that. And why was this letter in the drawer of the vanity she used every day of my life? My mom and I were close. She raised Dawn and I all by herself. And I put that lady through hell. My father did too. She went through some shit with her own dad and every man I knew about. Now this fucker. It got me thinking about how mothers are gifted a child, and in that moment, they unknowingly accept the most impossible task. They have to willingly and almost instantly give up a huge part of who they are becoming in order to focus on raising a child. I don't know of any woman, although I'm sure they do exist, that are able to continue down the exact path they were on before having a child. Likewise, I don't know of many men whose lives change all that much, whether they stick around or not. Maybe that's a coincidence. I don't think so. I don't think so. So fast forward a year and 7 months, and that will bring you to now. Those letters gave me not only something to focus on other than my dead mom, but the thoughts and questions have manifested into this idea for a podcast. How many times have you heard crazy stories about your dad when he was young, or any man that becomes a father? I guess you could be like me and have exactly zero stories about your dad, but conversations are there about who these men were before they become parents. Maybe that's simply because they are pretty much the same guy after. The stories of their crazy nights and bar fights, we share them all the time and laugh at their wild past. But how many times have you heard about when your mom ran away or her secret marriage? It makes perfect sense that in a society that has made it nearly impossible for a woman to have it all, to get the core of who she was and the life she lived rinsed away like some unwanted baptism and choosing to become a mother. This is if she even had a choice. Whether or not motherhood was part of her plan or complete surprise, it seems pretty universal that mothers let their past fade away. And although being a mom for a lot of us is the greatest thing we'll ever do, it's not the only thing we ever did. And I think we should talk about that. When I became a mother myself, I carefully curated a world I wanted to raise that baby in, one drastically different than the one I was raised in. And I almost immediately took a hard right and I never looked back. But over the years, 24 to be exact, and 3 kids later, I have parsed out pieces of who I was before them, not only to normalize the mistakes I made just being a human, but it was important to know how I got here. And I'm sure I have more stories to tell them than the ones that I have told them. But my hope is that none of my past dies with me because I want them to know that being a mother or not, I am important. But I mean, it kind of makes sense, right? I'm not blaming men or society. Well, not for everything, but as a woman, you carry that baby for 9 months and bring it home, and boom, everything changes. Even if you think it doesn't, it does. Your lifestyle, for sure, not to mention your hair and your clothes. It seems you're instantly walking down a new path, no doubt, and much more sensible footwear. But before we wipe out her path and cripple her wardrobe, who was she? What did she want to become? What were the stories she was going to leave behind before her life became all about us? Who broke her heart? And who was with her the night she got arrested? This isn't just a podcast for me. This is immersion therapy. I've spent most of the last 19 months avoiding eye contact when someone says her name. When I find something of hers that now belongs to me, I'm instantly out of breath. I hear certain songs, I like run to the bathroom, and not because I'm afraid to cry, but I'm afraid that when I start, I won't stop. So, yeah, this is for me. It's an attempt to work through my deep, visceral sadness because I honestly can't see the other side. I can't picture ever being okay. And that scares the shit out of me. But if I can learn new things about her and hear stories about your mothers, I feel like I can breathe new life into myself after her death. At least that's what I'm hoping. Whew, shit. Okay. I almost started to cry. Keep it together, kid. Without further ado, please enjoy my first guest on I Partied with Your Mama, Mr. Eddie Spaghetti. Let's fucking go.
Follow me, you're going on an island away from here, no matter where. Just tell me where, I'll get you there. Oh, I don't care. I will tip your tips and pay your fees. Oh, I'm your man. You don't need to worry about anything, 'cause yes, I can. I do anything and everything for you.
Pretty nice. There's an official countdown. And you're on.
Yeah,
Welcome to the podcast.
thank you.
You're my first guest.
Well, I'm so excited to be here.
Well, yeah. I mean, you're always here, unless
It's an exciting thing.
you're not here at all. I am sitting with Eddie Spaghetti of the Supersuckers.
The greatest rock and roll band in the world.
That's what I've heard. Someone mentioned that before.
If you tell enough people, eventually somebody will.
Someone will believe you. Well, it's still one of my favorite bands, which is crazy, but it's true. So you are here joining me on the I Partied with Your Mama podcast. And I just want to hear stories about mothers, and it doesn't have to be your mother, stories that will get sort of lost in the fray, left on the cutting room floor, that sort of thing. And I know you have a lot of stories about your mom. I have a couple too, but I'm going to save mine.
Yeah, you could probably do your own whole show about my mom.
Well, I'm hoping to get her on the show.
Yeah, you don't want to burn that bridge down before.
Yeah, I'll tell my stories on my last show. Just kidding. Now I want to hear her stories about her mother, because I know they're there as well. And I just wanted to start with you. You were the easiest guest to get, actually.
Yeah, I'm a pretty easy get.
Yeah, you'll do anything.
I'm in the vicinity.
Yeah. So let's just get into it. I want to hear any and all stories about Sammy.
All right. Well, my mom's name is Sammy, as you know, and I don't know, if this is like the kind of story that you're really looking for, but I figured, you're gonna get all kinds. Here's one. This one goes back, it involves a childhood friend of mine. I have known this kid since I moved into that. We moved in the neighborhood. Maybe I was in sixth grade, I guess.
And this neighborhood was in Tucson?
In Tucson, Arizona. Yep. Out on in the suburbs at the time of Tucson, way on the east side. So that's where I grew up, is the east side of Tucson. And I had this friend, I guess maybe I should name his name.
Was it Vaughn?
No. Fuck it, I'll name him. Who cares? His name is Steve Phillips.
Oh, you gave his last name
His
too.
name was Steven something Phillips.
Yeah.
And the Phillips lived like 5 houses down the street from us. And it was with these kids, the Phillips kids, Steve and Liz, who I kind of formed my first little group of musicians with. We called ourselves the Scub Buckets, and we made a tape that has, I don't know, 40 or so songs, or I don't know, it's not all songs, but
You still have that tape.
I still have
I've
it.
seen it. You know, my truck has a tape player if you want to listen to it.
Well, it's on a CD too that's actually in Quattro's car.
Nice.
And I did listen to that recently.
Okay, so you have a band.
Yeah, so we had a little band. It wasn't really a band, but we were making up songs and recording them.
Did you play instruments at the
Yeah.
time?
Yeah, we were all playing guitar and some piano, and
Who was the pianist?
Liz. Liz was actually the most musical of us all. She could play the guitar pretty well and sing pretty good and play the piano a little bit. So she was very helpful. But anyway, so we were doing that, and then we got a paper route together. And so I was basically working with him for years, 2 years at least at the time of this incident. I got the paper route, I think, when I was maybe 14 or 15, and had it until I was long after 16. I had the paper route for like 3 years. Oh, the reason I no longer had the paper route was because of this thing that happened with Steve on the way home from school one day. I was driving, so I had to be 16. So I was driving.
Well, I mean, you didn't have to be. I was driving way before I was
Sure,
16.
we weren't in Yuma rules.
That's true.
Tucson wasn't quite the Wild West that Yuma was.
That's for sure.
Anyway, so we're driving home, and I gave him a ride home from school, which I didn't do very often. I think he was very sporty, so he was usually doing some sort of sports extracurricular.
Soccer, lacrosse.
Soccer, yes, his baseball, whatever he was doing. But I was giving him a ride home this day, and we had to stop at the crosswalk, and there was a bunch of people crossing the street, and he singles a few of them out because of their color of their skin and says something about the damn N-words. And I looked at him.
And this kid knew you and your family.
He knew me and my family very well.
Like he had
And
had dinner at your house.
exactly. Had sleepovers at my house.
Right.
And not a lot. We weren't that close. Like we didn't really hang out a lot, but we did make the music together and we did have the paper route together. But at school, we weren't buddies or anything. So he knew that I had a sister who was black, and he knew how I felt about that. And he went ahead and said that anyway. And I just looked at him. I'm like, why would you say that? He's like, oh man, I don't hate them. I think everybody should own one. And I was
What?
like, whoa. So we got about what I figured was about halfway.
Was he laughing when he was saying this? Not that it makes it better, but or was he just being a Steve Phillips?
I think he was just repeating what he heard at home. I think it came from his parents.
Yes, it is learned behavior.
And that is probably why their children were not allowed to get very close to our family. There was always kind of this invisible wall there that they was put up on.
You just weren't privy to that
Right.
until
I
that
always
moment.
talked it up because they were very churchy, and our family was not churchy at all. More on that later. I now realize it was probably because they're super racist.
Right.
So he says that, and so we get about what I figure is about halfway between home and school, and I kick him out of the car. I said,
You just pulled over and
pulled over. I said, get out. He's like, what? I'm like, get the fuck out. He's like, what do you mean? And I was like, I had to tell him, I have my sister, your attitude is a problem for me. So I'm not gonna give you a ride home. He's like, well, man, this is like halfway. I gotta walk back to school or I could walk home from here. I'm like, yeah, I picked this spot on purpose. And so I went home and I told my mom about this, of course, when she got home from work. And then she just got so furious. She was like, those motherfuckers, I'm just gonna, oh. She had said something about those fucking honky lips or something like that. And she kept calling them honky lips and saying what a bunch of assholes they all are.
Was it obvious at that moment that she didn't like them before you gave her the news?
Yes.
So
There's a long-standing divide between the parents. There, and I always assumed it was because of religion. But so anyway, fast forward to next morning, I got to get up and go fold newspapers in that dude's driveway because that's where the papers got dropped off. And so you in the morning you'd go and fold up your papers and put them in the bag and put them on your bike and then ride around your neighborhood and throw them into the yards. So I knew that dreadful task was coming for me after having kicked him out of the car. Already I wasn't looking forward to this morning. And I get there and his parents, his whole family is out in the driveway staring bewilderedly down at the pavement. And as I get closer, I see that something is on their driveway. And as I get closer, I see that it's spray paint something. And as I arrive, I see that it says honky lip
in spray paint.
in right brownish or like dark red. It wasn't quite black, but it was in spray paint. And I
Your mom didn't tell you?
no. She never has mentioned it.
She snuck out in the middle of the night.
She denies it.
Oh, she didn't do it.
She didn't do it.
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Somebody else knew I did it.
Yeah, I bet she did it. I think she did it.
Oh man.
Did you look at her index finger?
Sure, thought to.
That's how we used to get in trouble.
Yeah. So that's just kind of like a little insight into how
Well, so
far she would go.
what happened did you fold the papers on top of honky lips?
Yeah, because Steve knew what it was about. I knew what it was about, but the parents didn't know.
So you guys just kind of had to suck it up and act dumb.
Because he didn't want to tell his parents why it happened.
Right.
So we just had to kind of sit there and
How could you not tell them? Oh,
he seethed at me.
I would have just told them.
I didn't want to lose the paper route gig just yet. I was like, how am I going to get through this? And
So was that your last folding of papers?
it was towards the end. Yeah.
So
I'm
basically,
getting too old for it anyway.
yeah. The moral of that story is Sammy doesn't take any shit.
She didn't not take any shit, any of that racist shit, that would come our way from time to time.
I'm surprised it wasn't constantly, because wasn't that like the 80s
Yeah,
in Tucson?
that happened like in the 80s. And there was stuff in the 70s from when I was a little kid that I remember. I don't know, by the 80s, I'd like to think people were a little more enlightened about that sort of stuff, but
No.
history doesn't shine so brightly on that theory.
No, not at all. Well, that's a pretty good story.
Yes.
Yep. What'd your dad say? Did he know anything about it? Interesting.
Wouldn't have liked it at all. And that might have been why I knew to keep my mouth shut about it, because he would have felt compelled to go confess and fuck up the whole funny comedy.
Which is probably why they're divorced. So I know a story that I want you to tell our listeners, if anybody's listening, the Jehovah's story.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
So
I tell this story any chance I get.
yeah, this is a classic. I can't even believe that she pulled it off because what was happening I guess this might have been in the late 70s. I was thinking maybe 78, 79. The Jehovah's Witnesses were coming around the neighborhood a lot one summer and constantly knocking on the doors. And my mom was very anti-organized religion.
Amen.
Yeah, here. In fact, when we were 7 years old, when I was 7 and my sister was 4, she pulled us aside after church one day and said, "Do you guys like church?" And we were both like, "No, not really." She said, "Do you want to keep going?" "No." "Okay, you don't have to." And that was the end of church.
So you went when you were
We
little?
went when we were little. She claims it was to give us a taste of it so we knew how awful it was. But I think really the truth is that my dad insisted on it.
Right.
So
Yeah.
she succumbed for as long as she could.
And then she said, I can't torture these kids anymore.
Doing it anymore.
So the Jehovah's come knocking on your door constantly,
They're
pissing Sammy off.
She's annoyed by the whole dogma of it, just the presumption of showing up at your house. She kept threatening to show up, answer the door naked, do all sorts of crazy things.
Well,
So,
that's why they kept coming back.
unbeknownst to me,
I feel like one of these times.
she went to the mall one day and got these red T-shirts and had those little felt letters on them, that you
Mm-hmm.
iron on at the mall. And she put three little sixes right on the chest of each one, like over your breast, where your breast pocket would be. So me and her and my sister all had these shirts. And
She didn't make one for your dad?
he wasn't ever home. This was happening during the day on her time. So she makes the shirts and the doorbell rings and she says, "Go get your shirt. Go get your shirts." So me and my sister go get our red shirts,
Get your red shirts on.
black sixes on them. And we're like, okay. And we put them on. And she's like, "Okay, stand right next to me. Now I'm going to answer the door. I'm going to open the door." She opens the door and the look on their faces was just so great. I will never forget it. One of them dropped their literature on the ground and they just turned around and walked away.
And they had nothing to say. They didn't.
They said nothing. They were like, one of them dropped his shit and they just
Bolted.
walked away. And my mom looked down at us and I was looking up at her like, oh my God, I cannot believe. I didn't know what 3 6s meant.
I'm sure.
I had no idea it was evil or anything about it. That's how I found out.
You're like, ooh, powerful.
Very powerful.
I think I
right?
like that.
I liked it a lot. So I wore it to school the next day and we had to have it turned inside out and got sent home with a note, which made my mom so irate once again. I think she marched over there and bitched out somebody for sending home the note. She was very up on her high horse back in those days.
Good. I mean,
Yeah, and learning the power of a symbol like that, there's no better way.
yeah, you got to teach them young, I think. It's like, she takes you to church so you can get a taste of it or whatever. She, puts 3 6s on your shirt so you can get a taste of it and you get to choose. That's a good mom.
True. So there was some good parenting out of her.
For sure. They can't just tell you something, they have to show it to you. That way you can really believe what you're supposed to believe,
Right. The story that kind of ties the whole room together with her is the insistence and she still insists to this day that I was born with a tail.
Yes.
And the point of this was driven home when I was really little. I might have been like in second grade or something like that. One of my very first memories is of my mom and my dad at the door of my room telling me goodnight, and they had some paperwork in their hands. And I asked him about the paperwork, and my mom looks at it, she's like, "Oh, this stuff?" She's like, "Nothing, this is just the paperwork we had to fill out when we had your tail removed." And my dad's looking over his shoulder and he's like, "Ooh, yeah." He makes a face and like they played it together perfectly. And I was like, "What? Let me see." And she's like, "Good night." And she closes the door and they go off. And so I've been tortured with that my entire life.
Well, and out of that torture comes a great song.
High art.
Yeah. Well, thanks for joining me with your mom tales.
Yeah.
Get it?
Get to party with your mama.
I'm going to have to put in a little drum beat there. All right. So that's it. I'm sure I'll have you back. You've got a couple more stories in you.
I'm sure I do.
Yeah. All right. Well, hopefully the sound doesn't suck and everybody has fun. Bye-bye.